I should have known Vanessa wouldn't go down without a fight. Divorce was never going to be simple with her. But even in my worst nightmares, I never imagined she'd stoop this low. The first time I saw the paperwork, I actually laughed. A dry, humorless chuckle that stuck in my throat the more I read. Child support for a child that didn't exist. At first, I assumed it was a mistake, a clerical error. Maybe the courthouse had mixed up our case with someone else's. But no, there was her name, Vanessa Carter, printed neatly on the documents, alongside a formal request for financial support. I kept flipping pages, my heartbeat accelerating. The justification? She claimed she'd been financially dependent on me throughout our marriage, and under some obscure state law, she argued that this entitled her to continued support, as if she were a child herself. I gritted my teeth. This wasn't about survival. This wasn't about fairness. This was a cash grab, pure and simple. I grabbed my phone and called my lawyer, Mark. He picked up on the second ring. "Tell me you've seen this," I said, my voice barely controlled. Mark sighed like he'd been expecting this. "Yeah, I saw it. It's a stretch, but not completely unheard of. She's exploiting a loophole. We can fight it, but it won't be easy." I exhaled sharply. She's asking for child support without a child. How the hell is this even a discussion? "Because the law is messy," Mark said. "She's not literally claiming you have a kid. She's arguing that you supported her like a dependent, so she's entitled to continued financial aid post-divorce." I pressed my fingers to my temple. "So she wants to keep living off me like a parasite, just under a different legal term?" Essentially, yes. I should have known. Vanessa had always been about the finer things: designer bags, luxury vacations, spa days that cost more than some people's rent. She never worked a day in our marriage, not because she sacrificed her career for us, but because she simply didn't want to. And now she was trying to turn laziness into a paycheck. Fine. If she wanted a war, she'd get one. 3 months later, we were in court. The tension in the room was suffocating. I sat at the defendant's table, my jaw clenched so tightly it ached. Across from me, Vanessa looked infuriatingly calm, dressed in a sleek black suit that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage. She had always known how to play the part, poised, composed, the perfect image of a wronged woman. Her lawyer, some high-powered shark, painted her as a devoted wife who had given up her dreams for our marriage, who had relied on me as her sole provider. "Mr. Carter's financial support was the foundation of her life," he droned. "It is only fair that she be compensated for the sacrifices she made." Sacrifices? I nearly laughed. The only thing Vanessa ever sacrificed was time between shopping sprees. The judge listened, his expression unreadable. Then finally, he turned to my lawyer. "Mr. Carter's counsel, your response?" Mark stood cool and confident. "Your Honor, Miss Carter's claims are baseless. She did not sacrifice a career. She simply chose not to work. Furthermore," he continued, sliding a thick stack of documents across the table, "we have reason to believe that Miss Carter engaged in fraudulent financial activity during the marriage, specifically taking out multiple loans in my client's name without his consent." Vanessa's composed mask slipped, just for a second, just long enough for me to see the fear. Mark pushed forward. "Given the evidence, we are not only requesting a dismissal of her claim, but also a full financial audit and potential legal action for fraud." A heavy silence fell over the room. Vanessa's lawyer shifted uncomfortably. She stared straight ahead, her fingers tightening around the edge of the table. Then, the judge spoke. "Miss Carter, your claim is unfounded. There is no legal basis for child support without a child. However," he flipped through the documents, pausing, "the evidence of financial fraud is concerning. I am granting the request for a full audit. If these claims are substantiated, you may be held liable for reimbursement." Vanessa's face went pale. I didn't smile. Not yet. This wasn't over. We walked out of that courtroom in silence. She wouldn't even look at me. And for the first time since this nightmare started, I felt something other than anger. I felt satisfaction, Dot. But I should have known Vanessa wouldn't accept defeat so easily, Dot. This was just the beginning. I thought that court ruling would be the end of it. I thought Vanessa, faced with the reality of her own fraud and the looming financial audit, would cut her losses and walk away. I underestimated her. A week later, I received a letter from her lawyer, a new claim. This time, she was accusing me of emotional distress. I stared at the document in disbelief. She cleaned the apartment, not out of obligation, but like someone who needed something to do, something to keep her from thinking. I went to work. When I came home, she was still there, Dot, and slowly something began to shift. I saw her trying Dot. She cooked dinner once. It wasn't much, just simple pasta, but the effort spoke louder than words, Dot. She got a secondhand coat from somewhere, stopped looking like she was barely holding herself together every second of the day, Dot. She didn't apologize, not in words, but every action, every quiet movement felt like something close. Dot. One night, I came home to find her sitting on the couch, staring at an old photo of us. I hadn't seen her cry once since she walked through my door, but that night there were silent tears running down her face. I didn't say anything. I just let her feel it. Dot, for the first time I wondered, was this what rock bottom looked like? And if it was she finally starting to understand everything she had thrown away? The courtroom was silent, tense, the kind of stillness that only comes before a storm. I sat with my lawyer, my fingers steepled, watching as Vanessa shifted uncomfortably in her seat across the room. The polished, arrogant woman who once spent my money like it was endless had been replaced by someone smaller, diminished. Her designer clothes couldn't hide the weight of what was coming. Dot. The judge reviewed the final documents. His expression remained unreadable as he flipped through page after page, and then, finally, he looked up. After reviewing the evidence of financial fraud, falsified claims, and unauthorized loans taken out in the petitioner's name, this court finds Mrs. Carter guilty of fraudulent activity and malicious litigation. In accordance with state law, she is required to repay all misappropriated funds, with additional legal penalties to be determined. Furthermore, given the malicious intent behind her false child support claim, the court grants Meister Carter a permanent injunction against any further financial claims from the defendant. There was a beat of silence before the words truly sank in. Dot. And then, Vanessa's face shattered. Dot. She shot to her feet. "No, this isn't. Your Honor, there must be." Her lawyer placed a hand on her arm, a silent plea to stop. He knew. This was over. Dot. But she wasn't ready to accept it. Dot. She turned to me, eyes burning with something between rage and desperation. "You did this," she hissed, her voice shaking. "You planned all of this. You wanted to ruin me." I just looked at her. Let the words sink in. She still didn't get it. "No, Vanessa," I said finally, my voice even. "You ruined yourself." Security was called in when she refused to leave the courtroom. I watched as they escorted her out, her protest growing weaker, more pathetic with every step. Dot, she had spent years believing she was untouchable. Dot, now, she had nothing. It didn't take long for the fallout to hit. The financial penalties were severe, worse than even I had anticipated. She had to liquidate assets just to stay afloat, selling off the things she once valued more than anything. The sports car? Gone. The designer bags, a pond, the apartment? Foreclosed. I heard through mutual acquaintances that she tried to lean on old friends for support. But Vanessa had never built real relationships, only transactional ones. And now that she had nothing left to offer, no one wanted to be associated with her. Dot. She tried dating wealthy men, but her reputation preceded her. No one with any sense wanted to be her next victim. Dot last I heard. She was bouncing between cheap rentals, drowning in legal debt, clinging to whatever scraps of the life she used to have, Dot. She had fought so hard to take everything from me. Dot, and in the end, she was the one who lost everything. Dot A's for me. I moved on, Dot. Not just financially, I had always been fine in that regard, but mentally, emotionally, Dot. For the first time in years, I felt free. I got my own place, something simple but truly mine. I focused on my career, cut out the people who had only been there for convenience. Dot. One evening, as I was leaving work, I got a message from an unknown number. Vanessa, I made mistakes. I see that now. Can we talk? I stared at the screen for a long moment, Dot. Then, comma, without hesitation, I deleted the message. Dot, no response, no second chances, Dot. She'd already taken more from me than I was ever willing to give again. Did as I stepped outside, the crisp evening air filled my lungs. It was over, Dot. And for the first time in a long, long time, I was truly at peace. Vanessa, the woman who drained my bank account, the woman who tried to scam me out of child support for a non-existent child, was now trying to paint herself as the victim. She claimed I had manipulated her into financial dependence, that I had psychologically controlled her by encouraging a lifestyle where she didn't have to work, that I had, in effect, forced her into helplessness. I nearly laughed. The sheer audacity was astonishing. Vanessa hadn't been some naive, powerless woman trapped in a marriage she didn't want. She had been in control the entire time. She had dictated where we lived, how we spent our money, what cars we drove, what vacations we took. The only thing she hadn't controlled was the reality of her own spending habits. I forwarded everything to Mark, and within hours, we were on the phone again. "You've got to be kidding me," I muttered. "She's desperate," Mark said. "She knows the financial audit is coming, and she's trying to shift the narrative. If she can make herself look like the victim, she might be able to negotiate a settlement instead of facing fraud charges." "That's not going to happen," I said through gritted teeth. "Good," Mark replied. "Because if we're playing dirty, we have options too." That got my attention. "What do you mean?" Mark sighed. "I wasn't going to bring this up unless we had to, but during the financial audit, we found something interesting. Vanessa wasn't just racking up debt in your name. She was sending money to someone else." I felt my stomach drop. "Who?" "We're still tracing it, but from what we can tell, she was making regular transfers, thousands of dollars, into a private account under a different name, someone she didn't want you to know about." Something inside me twisted, a cold realization settling over me. This wasn't just about money. This wasn't just greed. There was someone else. Vanessa hadn't just been living off me. She had been funding someone else's life behind my back. I clenched my jaw. "Find out who it is." Mark was quiet for a moment. "You sure? This is already ugly. If we go down this road, it might get worse." "She made it ugly," I said. "Now let's finish it." It took Mark's team less than a week to track the account. When he called me with the results, his voice was unreadable. "You're not going to like this," he said. I exhaled sharply, already bracing for impact. "Who is it?" There was a pause. Then finally, "His name is Daniel Green." The name hit me like a punch to the gut. Daniel, my former best friend. I gripped my phone tighter, my fingers turning white. I hadn't spoken to Daniel in over a year, not since the slow collapse of my marriage had taken over my life. But before that, we had been inseparable. College roommates, best man at my wedding, the guy I trusted with everything. And now I knew why Vanessa had been so bold, so shameless. Because she hadn't been spending our money on herself. She had been supporting him. I forced my voice to stay steady. "How much?" "At least 60 grand, Mark said. "Possibly more. We're still digging through the transfers." $60,000. My stomach churned. That was my money, My hard-earned salary, the savings I had built up, the investments I had made. Vanessa hadn't just betrayed me. She had funded another man's life with my bank account, a man I had once considered family. "Do we have proof?" I asked. My voice was quieter now, controlled, but there was a dangerous edge to it. Bank statements, transaction histories, and get this, Vanessa and Daniel even shared a private joint account, opened over a year ago. A year. So while I had been fighting for my marriage, trying to fix the cracks, trying to make things work, she had already moved on. She had already chosen him. I felt something inside me snap. "This changes everything," Mark said. "We can file for damages, push for fraud charges, maybe even get her on misappropriation of marital assets. If we do this right, she won't just lose the divorce settlement. She might have to pay you back everything she stole." It wasn't enough. Not yet. I wanted more. "I need to see them," I said suddenly. Mark hesitated. "Lucas, be careful. You've already won in court. If you do something impulsive—" "I'm not going to do anything stupid," I interrupted. That was a lie, Dot, because I was done playing nice, Dot. It didn't take much to find them. A few calls, a few texts, and soon I had the address. Daniel's apartment, a sleek high-rise in the city, the kind of place Vanessa had always dreamed of. And now I knew why. She had been living there too. When I arrived, the concierge barely spared me a glance as I walked through the lobby. I took the elevator up, my pulse a steady drumbeat in my ears. The anger inside me was coiled tight, ready to explode, but I forced myself to stay calm. I wanted them to see me like this, controlled, calculating, dangerous. I reached the door, knocked once, and when it opened, there she was, Dot Vanessa Dot. She wasn't expecting me. That much was obvious. Her eyes widened for a fraction of a second before she masked it with indifference. She was dressed casually, leggings and oversized sweater. But the apartment behind her told a different story. Expensive furniture, designer touches, everything perfectly curated, everything paid for with my money. "Lucas," she said smoothly, leaning against the doorframe. "What a surprise." I didn't smile. "Is he here?" Her lips twitched. "Who?" I stepped forward just enough to make her shift uncomfortably. "Daniel," I said. "Or should I say your business partner?" The flicker of fear in her eyes was satisfying, but she recovered quickly, giving me a slow, lazy smirk. "You really need to move on." I let out a low chuckle. "Move on?" "Oh, Vanessa, I'm just getting started." She tried to close the door, but I caught it with one hand, pushing just enough to remind her that I wasn't here to be dismissed. I wasn't the man she could control anymore. "Let me in, Vanessa." She's hesitated for half a second too long. I saw it, the flicker of uncertainty in her eyes, the way she shifted her weight from one foot to the other. She was scared, not of me, but of what I knew Dot good. "You're not welcome here," she said, forcing a bored tone, as if this was just an inconvenience, as if I was a lingering problem she could swat away. I leaned in slightly. "Then I'll just talk to Daniel." Her jaw tightened. She knew I wasn't bluffing, and the last thing she wanted was me dragging her new life into the light. With an exasperated sigh, she stepped back, letting me in, Dot. The place was exactly what I expected. Pristine, expensive, curated. Vanessa had always liked to play wealthy, even when it wasn't her money she was spending. The leather couch, the crystal glasses on the marble kitchen counter, the designer throw blanket draped over the armrest. It all screamed Vanessa, and yet there were touches that weren't hers. A pair of men's running shoes by the door, a watch left on the coffee table, a half-empty bottle of whiskey next to a laptop. Daniel's. I turned to her. "How long?" She crossed her arms. "How long what?" I smiled. "How long have you been screwing him behind my back?" She rolled her eyes, but I saw the way her fingers twitched against her sleeve. "Grow up, Lucas. You and I were over long before we signed the papers. You just didn't want to see it." I stepped closer. That's not what the bank statements say. Her face paled just slightly, a tiny crack in her composure. I don't know what you're talking about. I pulled out my phone and scrolled to the screenshots Mark had sent me. Bank transfers. Thousands of dollars. Her name? Daniel's name. A joint account. I held it up, watching her face. So tell me again how this isn't what I think it is? She inhaled sharply, her mask of indifference slipping. You had no right. I cut her off. No right. I laughed. You stole from me. You tried to scam me in court. And now you want to act like I'm the villain for finding out the truth? Her lips parted, but before she could speak, another voice cut through the silence. Vanessa? I turned Dot, and there he was, Dot Daniel. Dot he had just stepped out of what I assumed was the bedroom, barefoot, a towel slung over his shoulder. The moment he saw me, he froze, his face drained of color. Lucas, he said, his voice tight. I tilted my head. Well, well, look who finally decided to show up. Vanessa moved quickly, placing herself between us. This is ridiculous, she snapped, her voice sharper now, more desperate. What do you want, Lucas? To humiliate me? To get some kind of revenge? I let the silence stretch, let them both feel the weight of it. Then I turned my gaze to Daniel. I want to hear him say it, I said. Daniel swallowed. Say what? I took a slow step forward. That you were sleeping with my wife, that you were living off my money while I was too blind to see it. He didn't answer. Coward? I gave a humorless chuckle. That's what I thought. Vanessa exhaled sharply. You're being dramatic. Daniel and I. Don't, I said, my voice cutting through hers. I don't need the excuse. I don't need the justifications. I know exactly what you did. I turned back to Daniel, shaking my head. You were my best friend. He flinched. Good. You smiled in my face while you stabbed me in the back, I continued. I trusted you. I would have done anything for you, and this is what you do? His jaw clenched, his fists tightening at his sides. It wasn't like that. Then how was it? I asked, my voice dangerously low. More silence, more cowardice. I could feel the rage coiling in my chest, the urge to do something, anything, to make them feel even an ounce of what they had done to me. But I knew better. I wouldn't lose control. I wouldn't give them the satisfaction. Instead, I exhaled slowly, stepping back. You know what? I said finally. It doesn't even matter anymore, because this, I gestured around the apartment. This little fantasy you two built, it's about to come crashing down. Vanessa's eyes narrowed. What does that mean? I smiled. A slow, deliberate smile. It means the audit is done. It means the fraud charges are coming. It means you don't just owe me money. You owe the state. Her face twisted in panic. You're lying. Am I? I shrugged. Guess you'll find out soon enough. Daniel took a step forward. Lucas. I raised a hand, cutting him off. Don't. Just don't. For a moment he just stood there, staring at me, his mouth opening and closing like he wanted to say something, like he wanted to beg. But there was nothing left to say. I had wasted enough time, enough energy, enough of my life on these two. It was over. And soon, they'd realize just how costly their betrayal really was. I turned on my heel and walked toward the door, but before I could reach it, Vanessa's voice rang out behind me, laced with desperation. Lucas, wait, I didn't stop. Lucas, please, we can fix this. That made me laugh. Fix this? I paused with my hand on the doorknob, turning just enough to meet her wide, pleading eyes. The same eyes that had once convinced me she was my partner, my soulmate. Now, they were just the eyes of a liar who had run out of options. You don't get it, do you? I said, my voice eerily calm. This isn't something you can fix. You burned it all to the ground. Her breath hitched. But we were good together. Before everything I tilted my head. Before what? Before you drained my bank account? Before you lied to the court? Before you screwed my best friend behind my back?" She flinched at that, but I wasn't done. "You're not sorry you did it," I said, my voice like steel. "You're just sorry you got caught." For the first time, she had no words. And Daniel? He just stood there, silent, his face twisted in something that looked a lot like regret, but not enough to matter. I exhaled slowly, shaking my head. "Enjoy your new life," I said, voice dripping with finality. "It's not going to last long." Then I walked out, and this time, she didn't stop me, Dot. The next few weeks were glorious, Vanessa and Daniel thought they had won, thought they had built their perfect little world together on the ruins of my life. But reality hit them fast. The court ruling was just the beginning, Dot. The audit exposed everything, every fraudulent transaction, every loan taken in my name, every luxury purchase she had tried to hide. She didn't just owe me money. She owed the banks, the credit card companies, the IRS, Dot. And the best part? She couldn't pay it back. Her accounts were frozen. Her assets were seized. That beautiful apartment, gone, Dot, the luxury, gone, Dot, and Daniel. He ran. Oh, he tried to play the supportive boyfriend at first, tried to act like they would get through it together. But when the weight of it all came crashing down, he did what cowards do best. He disappeared, Dot. The last I heard, he took a job out of state and left her with everything. The debts, the lawsuits, the shattered remains of a life built on lies. And Vanessa ? Well, Dot. She tried to fight it, of course, tried to claim innocence, tried to play the victim. But the evidence was undeniable, and in the end, she lost everything. I sat on my new balcony, a glass of whiskey in hand, watching the city lights flicker below. I should have felt empty. I should have felt broken, bitter, ruined, Dot. But I didn't. I felt free, Dot. For the first time in years, I didn't wake up with a weight on my chest. I didn't second-guess myself. I didn't feel like a fool drowning in someone else's game. I had walked through the fire, Dot, and I had come out untouched. Dot, the phone buzzed beside me. A message from Mark. "It's official. Vanessa's case is closed. She's got nothing left." I smirked, tossing my phone onto the table. She had tried to take everything from me, Dot. But in the end, her greed cost her everything. I thought it was over. I thought I'd left the chaos behind, that I could finally just live. But here's the thing. The past never leaves without a trace. It clings to you like a sticky web. Even if you shake it off, the feeling of grime stays on your skin, Dot. The first few weeks after the trial felt like freedom. I woke up in my own bed, knowing my bank account wasn't draining without my knowledge, that no one was deceiving me, using me, lying to my face with a smile as if nothing was happening. Dot, but then came the shadows. I found myself checking the locks before bed, not once, but 3 or 4 times, just to be sure. I caught myself not trusting people, not even the cashier at the store, not even the taxi driver who looked in the rearview mirror for too long. I no longer believed in sincerity. Dot, every message from a woman I tried to talk to felt like a trap. I tried to move on. I really did. But one evening when I came home, standing in the darkness of my apartment, I realized I was alone. Dot, the real blow came when I saw her, Dot. It was an accident. I wasn't looking for her. I wasn't following her. Hell, I thought I'd never see her again. Dot. But there she was, standing under a streetlight, its glow making her face look pale, exhausted. Not the woman I once knew. A suitcase sat beside her. I was in my car, waiting for the light to turn green. She didn't see me, but I saw her, Dot. Where is she staying? Is anyone even with her? I shouldn't have cared. She deserved this. Every step, every loss, every moment of fear I felt when I realized what my life had become because of her, Dot. But when she sat down on the bench, buried her face in her hands, and her shoulders trembled in a silent scream, I knew that hate wasn't the only thing I felt, Dot. and that terrified me more than anything. I couldn't just leave it like this. That's why 2 days later, I walked into a small cafe near the city center and took a seat in the corner. I knew she worked here. A wave of nausea hit me when I saw her in a waitress's apron, dark circles under her eyes. She saw me. She froze. But she had no choice. Work was work. Are you ordering something? Her voice was different, not the way I remembered it. I looked at her, torn between two warring sides, one that wanted to see her broken, and the other that wanted to understand how we had come to this. Coffee, I said. She nodded, turned, and walked away. But before she disappeared behind the counter, I saw her hand. Thin red cuts along her wrist. A tightness gripped my chest. And in that moment, I understood. Our story wasn't over. I told myself I was done. That walking into that cafe was just curiosity, nothing more. That I wasn't there because I cared, but because I wanted to see the aftermath. To know without a doubt that she was suffering as much as she had made me suffer. But as I sat there, fingers curled around the cheap ceramic mug, watching her move through the cafe like a ghost of the woman I once knew, I realized something unsettling. I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel like I had won. I should have. After everything she put me through, after the lies, the fraud, the sheer audacity of trying to scam me even after our marriage was dead, I should have been reveling in her downfall. But all I could think about was the look in her eyes. She'd always been sharp, cunning, untouchable, a woman who could talk her way out of anything, who carried herself with the confidence of someone who had the world in the palm of her hand. But the person I saw now, she looked hollow. Her movements were robotic, her shoulders slightly hunched, as if the weight of the world had finally settled onto them. And those red marks on her wrist, the ones I shouldn't have noticed, the ones I definitely shouldn't have cared about, they were burned into my brain. The universe had balanced the scales. She took from me, and now the world had taken from her. So why did it feel so damn empty? I finished my coffee but didn't call her back to the table. I left a bill that covered far more than the price of a drink and walked out, telling myself that was the last time I'd involve myself in her life. I was lying. The next week was hell. I couldn't focus at work. I kept seeing her face in my head, kept wondering if she even had a place to stay, if she was eating, if she was safe. I wasn't supposed to care. I didn't want to care. But I had spent years loving her. Even if that love had turned to hate. You don't just erase someone from your soul overnight. I told myself I wasn't checking up on her when I passed by the cafe again a few days later, that I just happened to be in the area, that it was just coincidence. And then I saw her walking out the back entrance. She didn't see me, but I saw her. Saw the way she pulled her coat tighter around herself, like she was bracing against a cold that had nothing to do with the weather. Saw the way she walked, not with purpose, not like she was going home, but like she had nowhere to go at all. That was when the thought hit me, sharp and unwelcome. Where does she even sleep? I found out 2 days later. I shouldn't have done it. I knew that. But curiosity had a chokehold on me. It was late, past midnight, when I saw her again. The cafe had long since closed, and yet there she was, curled up on one of the metal benches outside, her coat wrapped tightly around her like a cocoon. It wasn't just temporary rest. She was sleeping there. And that did something to me I couldn't explain. I should have walked away, should have left her to whatever life she had built for herself after she burned ours to the ground. But instead, I found myself standing there, staring at the woman who had once shared my bed, my life, my trust, and all I could think was, this isn't right. She might have been ruthless. She might have deserved everything she got, but no one deserved this. I clenched my jaw, shoved my hands into my pockets, and turned away. But I knew, without a doubt, that this wasn't over. Not yet. I told myself I wouldn't interfere, that it wasn't my problem anymore, that she had made her choices, and now she had to live with them. But that night, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her curled up on that metal bench, the cold creeping into her bones, the city swallowing her whole. By morning, I had convinced myself that my concern wasn't about her. It was about principle, about basic human decency. No matter what she had done, she wasn't some stranger. I had once loved her, and maybe, just maybe, I needed to see this through to the very end, to know that whatever happened next was truly the final chapter between us. I spent the next few days watching, waiting, and what I saw made me realize just how far she had fallen. She wasn't just broke, she was desperate. At first I thought she had friends, someone she could stay with. But the more I watched, the more I realized the truth. She had no one. The people who once clung to her when she had money and status were nowhere to be found. Her old social circle, the one that revolved around expensive brunches and designer shopping trips, had discarded her the moment she became a liability. I saw her linger outside restaurants, hesitating before stepping in, only to walk away when she realized she couldn't afford to sit down. I saw her wearing the same clothes for days at a time, her once perfect appearance slipping away like sand through her fingers. I even saw her at an ATM, swiping a card over and over, her expression crumbling when it kept declining. And then, the moment that shattered the last of my resolve. It was late. The streets were nearly empty. I was sitting in my car, parked across from the cafe, telling myself, again, that I wasn't getting involved. Then she appeared. I don't know how long she'd been standing there, but I saw the way she eyed the trash bin outside the cafe, the way she hesitated, hands clenched at her sides, before finally reaching forward, digging through it. I don't know if she found anything. I couldn't watch anymore. That was it. That was the line. I wasn't cruel. I wasn't like her. I didn't care if she deserved this. I wasn't going to let her rot on the street. The next morning, I walked into the cafe. Not as a shadow in the background, not as a spectator. As a participant. She was behind the counter, head down, eyes hollow. She didn't see me until I spoke. "You need a place to stay." She flinched. I saw it. The flash of recognition, the shock, the shame. And then, just as quickly, her walls shot up. She straightened, lifted her chin, forced out a hollow laugh. "I'm fine." She wasn't. She knew it. I knew it. "You're sleeping on benches, Vanessa." Her face froze. She recovered quickly, but not fast enough. "Why do you care?" she said, voice sharp, defensive. I could have told her the truth, that I didn't know why, that maybe I was just too soft, that maybe I had needed to see her fall to believe justice was real. But now that I had, it didn't feel like justice anymore. But I didn't. Instead, I just said, "Because I used to love you." That was the final blow. Her mask cracked. For a second, just a second, I saw the real her, the fear, the exhaustion, the weight of everything she'd lost. Then, before she could argue, before she could reject whatever shred of help I was offering, I pulled a key from my pocket and slid it onto the counter. "I'm not saying you deserve this," I said quietly, "but I'm also not going to pretend I don't see what's happening. There's an empty apartment. It's yours if you need it." I turned to leave. I didn't look back. That night, I sat in my apartment, staring at my phone. I told myself she wouldn't come, that she was too proud, that she would rather freeze on the street than accept help from the man she had tried to ruin. But just after midnight, there was a soft knock at the door. And when I opened it, Vanessa stood there, looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. She didn't say thank you. She didn't say anything at all. She just stepped inside, And for the first time since this nightmare began, I saw it. A woman who had finally learned what it meant to lose Dot. She moved through the doorway like a ghost, silent, barely meeting my eyes. I closed the door behind her, sealing us into a space that had once been ours, but now felt unfamiliar, heavy with things left unsaid. She stood in the dim glow of the hallway, arms wrapped around herself, like she was trying to hold in whatever was left of her dignity. I didn't offer her a hug. I didn't say it was okay, because it wasn't. Instead, I motioned toward the spare room. "There are blankets in the closet," I said. "The shower's down the hall." She nodded, her face unreadable. I should have left it at that, walked away. But some part of me, the part that still remembered the woman I'd married, before the lies, before the greed, couldn't. "You hungry?" Her lips parted like she wanted to refuse, to keep up whatever act of pride she had left Dot. But then just as quickly, she gave in Dot. She nodded. I walked into the kitchen, pulled out some leftovers, reheated them in silence. When I set the plate on the counter, she hesitated before stepping forward. I watched her eat, not because I wanted to, but because I couldn't not watch. She wasn't the woman who used to pick at five-star meals, sending back plates if the presentation wasn't perfect. She wasn't the woman who used to roll her eyes when I made simple homemade dinners. She ate like she was starving, because she was. When she finished, she set the fork down carefully, almost mechanically. Her fingers lingered against the edge of the plate, and for the first time I saw it. The slightest tremor. She was breaking, not in the loud, dramatic way she used to when things didn't go her way. No screaming, no blaming the universe, no deflecting onto someone else. Dot, this was different. Dot, this was real. Dot. She took a shaky breath. "I don't deserve this." Her voice was barely above a whisper, like admitting it out loud would make it hurt more. I didn't argue Dot, because she was right. Dot instead, I said, "Get some sleep." I left her sitting there, staring at the empty plate like it held all the answers she had spent years ignoring Dot. The next few days were quiet. Dot, she stayed. She didn't question it, didn't push for conversation. She woke early, showered, kept to herself.